An LSU conspiracy theory that may have legs? And did the New Orleans Saints really get everything they could have gotten out of one particular trade at the deadline? We're talking about that and so much more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in on this Tuesday morning. Hopefully you had a good weekend. We took Monday off. Just felt like it was the right place. And also, to be fair, the national championship was definitely going to take away from a lot of the headlines that we were going to get to. But there was something I wanted to kind of touch base on because LSU athletics as a whole isn't the only, they haven't just gotten players in the portal, because this one popped up late last week with the reports that LSU is hiring Adam Clark to the front office position. He was the NC State Associate Athletic Director and the football chief of staff. He was expected to be hired, and lo and behold, he was. And seeing him be in a similar role over at LSU, it has people thinking and their heads are spinning in a lot of different ways, especially because the state of LSU basketball isn't in a right space. You know, we talked about it a lot over the last couple weeks. He blew a 22-point lead against Kentucky. Again, it's not a Kentucky team that may have been very good, but it took you till this past Saturday to get a win over an SEC program. A 78-70 win over Missouri. It's still not a great look to be 13-5, but 1-5. Excuse me, you're 1-4 in SEC play. Very early on, you're going to be dealing with Florida tonight, and then you've got Saturday against Arkansas, who is ranked 20th in the country. So more likely than not, you're going 0-2 on the week, and you're sitting at 1-6. That is not where you want to be at right now. And again, I think Matt McMahon has done a good enough job, but I think some tinfoil hats are being put on right now. And I think justifiably so to a certain extent. And it's mainly because I firmly believe that if everything goes right, again, getting Adam Clark, a guy who was the associate AD, chief of staff for the football operations, he has a front office position with LSU and is a high-ranking office. Where that is and what that is in particular, who knows? But of course, there are people out there that are firmly believing, and I feel like there is at least some reason to have the hopium running through your veins. It's because it's Will Wade. Will Wade currently at NC State. And I feel like if there's any job that he would leave to go back to, it's got to be the job over at LSU. Because if he was able to turn that team around in the time that he did, again, in just 2 years, he turned that program into a Sweet 16 program. Obviously, the strong ass offers and things of that nature definitely hurt the program's, image for a while. But at the same time, they did a lot better than they did before. You go look back at that last year, Johnny Jones. I will never forget that. 2-16 in SEC play, 10-21 overall. That team largely checked out on. It was not a great, starting five. The team you lost a lot of really great players and one player that felt like he was kind of a malcontent. And of course, talk about Ben Simmons. You lost Keith Hornsby, Tim Quarterman, and you had some players coming in like Duop Reed, Skylar Maisley. You had some really good players on paper on that team, but they just could not get it done after, a few years of being fairly mediocre, especially against just general competition. Johnny Jones gets the axe, and then you see Will Wade in 2 years get this LSU team to the Sweet 16, something they hadn't seen in a very, very long time. Again, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I firmly believe that if everything is set up, if we see Matt McMahon get fired by the end of the season, and you have someone like, Adam Clark be behind the scenes over at LSU in a high ranking position, like hypothetically, I'm thinking he could be the man behind Verge Osbury in a similar position Verge was in. I could firmly believe that's a possibility. You have him over there, has connections with Will Wade, and says, hey, we're reevaluating some things with our athletics program, namely on the basketball side of things. LSU basketball has not done that well in 2025-2026 season. I think we need to make a massive switch when it comes to it. And this could be that big move to get him over there. Again, NC State not looking too bad right now, 12-5, 3-1 record. It feels like they could have a very good chance to get into the NCAA tournament. Again, NC State just a couple of years ago was in the Final Four, and they dropped off very hard, 12-19 in 2024-25 season, but we're in the Final Four the year prior, which is absolutely crazy to see a man get fired that quickly, but it is what it is. You wind up seeing Will Wade move up and get back into the D1 ranks after being over at McNeese a couple of years, and also getting a really nice win in the round of 64 last season. So it feels like he could get this team back under control. And then you have LSU men's basketball kind of on that downside, a lot like what they were after Johnny Jones kind of checked out. And more likely than not, I just feel like the hope is there that Will Wade could come back and bring this program back to at least somewhat relevance. I feel like it's going to take a little bit of time, but I feel like that pace would pick up quite quickly, just depending on who he's able to secure to transfer over from NC State and be able to work the NIL money and give those players a strong ass offer. And more importantly, it doesn't affect the bottom line and does not affect the program in a negative light. Because what he was doing back in the late 2010s, it's kind of just the game now. It's kind of the game that's being played with the NIL deals and stuff like that. So it feels like he could get some things done and be able to wheel and deal to get some big name players. Because if he's able to do that under the table, imagine what he can do now that it's free and legal in the wild, wild west. And I'll wrap things up on today's pod. Kind of got a light one today. And it was something I thought about over the weekend. Was watching the Seahawks put belt to ass on the San Francisco 49ers. It was an absolute just beat down all the way around. And then it was just, again, it's amazing to me the amount of things the Saints gave up as a trade deadline. And Rashid Shaheed again proves himself to just be an absolute beast. And it has me kind of questioning. I was one of those that it hurt me to see Shaheed leave. But it was a necessary thing because you were going to have to pay him a boatload of money, and it felt like the Saints were going to do that for the young man. Lo and behold, he came up big again in the opening kickoff of the game on Sunday. He took the opening kickoff back to take the lead early on in the game. Nothing short of spectacular. I mean, that crowd was about as loud as they were for, and cover your ears, Saints fans, for this one, the Beastquake about a decade ago. And that fan base has been itching to get back into the Super Bowl after over a decade being away from it. Because again, Seahawks were actually on the verge of building something really special. And then Marshawn Lynch didn't get the ball at the 1 yard line. And we all know what happened from there. The Patriots dynasty continued to grow. But that's not what we're here for. It's just amazing to me that he has continued to just be an impact player. He was such a solid hand all the way around for the New Orleans Saints, especially when he started in the league. Like the first few games he had, first catch was a touchdown. First career touch was a touchdown. It was amazing to see this man have 2 touchdowns, and he only touched the ball twice. And this was an undrafted free agent. This was a guy that you got for nothing. Nothing. And he was able to parlay that into nothing but success. Something that I think a lot of Saints fans and I think some players need to take, advantage of and say, hey, you've got some skills, show up and show out, and you could have that opportunity to be the next Rashid Shaheed. Heck, even to a certain extent, if you go back about 20 years ago, Michael Lewis, the beer man, could be the same kind of guy for the New Orleans Saints. You just got to find your spot, find the place that's going to be the best for you. And it worked out for Shaheed in a big way. He's going to be getting a big contract deal either with the Seahawks or any other of the 31 teams in the NFL. That said, it has me kind of thinking, right? Is the fact that the Saints only got a 4th and 5th round pick in 2026 for a guy that was such a huge contributor for the Saints in multiple ways. He didn't necessarily do a whole hell of a lot in terms of, the output comparatively speaking, but he was a very reliable wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. You look at what he has in just a short couple of years in the league. This is his 4th season. He has 12 touchdowns, a little over 2,000 yards receiving. And he is definitely a great specialist at kick returns, 3 punt returns for a touchdown. Nothing short of impressive. He was very good with the Saints, and he feels like he's being pretty doggone good with the Seattle Seahawks, especially on the special teams front. He got a really nice kickoff return for a touchdown. He's in the Pro Bowl this year. Now, whether or not he actually participates in that, it's anybody's guess. But he is a star in the making. He's going to rise up in his stock. But you kind of have to think about it. If you're the Saints, are you kind of having that like buyer's remorse, or you're like shaking your head being like, man, I could have gotten a little bit more out of that? I feel like the New Orleans Saints did shortchange themselves in a sense. And I think it's mainly because Mickey Loomis doesn't know how to make deals the right way. I feel like the best case scenario would have been to have those 4th and 5th round picks. And I think maybe you get a 3rd round pick in next year's draft. I think that would have been a nice little middle ground, because I don't think you would have gotten higher than 4th and 5th. But I think you would have loved to have gotten some for 2027. Again, we've talked about it a lot, and we're going to continue to talk about it as we get closer and closer to the big day in April, is that the New Orleans Saints have a 2-year window to really build things up in a big way. And they have to, have to hit on these next 2 drafts. Somehow, some way, Kellen Moore was able to keep Mickey Loomis from meddling entirely and get some things done. And be able to get a pretty good draft class. Again, it's 1 year. You can't necessarily hold all your hopes on 1 year of a great hit and have that be sustained. But I still need to see this team hit on a draft this year, and especially with the little amount of picks that you have to nail this one. And then you also need to start focusing in and pivoting towards 2027 as well. I think they should have gotten something to build off of into the 2027 season. I know it's a gamble, but at the same time, I think Mickey Loomis would have loved to have some extra picks to play with going into the following draft. But that about do it for today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Make sure you subscribe today. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search Louisiana Lunch Hour on YouTube or wherever else you get your podcast. That way you don't miss a single episode. Talk to you tomorrow.